Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done listening to Death's End. This is book 3 of the Remembrance of Earth's Past series, more commonly known as the Three Body Problem series. And I want to give you my unedited thoughts on finishing the book, which was just right now. So I really like this thing. I'm going to end up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really wish I could give it 5 stars. There were moments in this book where I felt like it was going to get to that level. But ultimately, I just the back half of the book kind of lost me, kind of disappointed me a little bit. But overall, I liked it, and I have very positive kind of feelings about this. The way that, I look at the trilogy as a whole. Not necessarily the very way it ended, but, everything kind of coming together for the whole, body of the work was rather nice. And, I'm going to struggle to talk about this book without spoilers, because I find that this is one of those series where you're better off going into this without knowing really much of anything. And even what it's really about, I think you'd be much better served. It's kind of hard to get into the first book until the second half of it and things, or maybe even like the last third of it when it starts going. And then the second book here is one of the best books that I've read this year. And the third one, had such good concepts going for it. In half of the book. And then the other one, I suspect a lot of people will end up really, really liking it, but it just didn't kind of strike the right note for me. I'll talk a little spoilers kind of at the end of this video so I can clue people in that have already read this. But yeah, I don't read a lot of science fiction, and it's tough for me to recommend science fiction to people when I don't find myself as like an expert in it. And I really, more than anything, have to just go based on my emotions and what it made me feel, because I don't have a lot to compare it to. But this is just extremely well done science fiction overall. The concepts here are bonkers. It goes for it all. And even though it doesn't always get it, the fact that it's so ambitious and to do these crazy concepts in a hard sci-fi kind of way, and by hard sci-fi, I mean really leaning into the science part of sci-fi, not the characters, not going into these, great depths into knowing who these people are, but teaching the reader something about science as we're going along, and using everything based in, a future reality that one could really envision, and what that means from a science fiction standpoint. It's got to be so hard to keep the reader entertained when you're going that hard into the science part of things. But as somebody who's not a huge science guy or a huge sci-fi guy, I found myself, riveted by so much going on here. I struggle so much with how to describe this, because I feel like the potential was there for the series to be one of the all-time greats. And, maybe it is for a lot of people. It's certainly very good for me, but the writing is so poor in some ways, and I don't know if it's just the choices that Cixin Liu made when he was writing this, or there's a lot being kind of lost in translation here. But the characters feel so flat, and no depth, no emotional depth to them. The dialogue feels like it's a bunch of characters that are the same person, the way they talk to each other, with very subtle differences between them. And the differences are more told to you, not really shown about the character. So the writing is, from the character perspective, is poor. Not even just decent, just poor. So for a series, for me to end up liking it when that's setting up the backdrop here is something special, because the plot is amazing. I've been looking for a plot like this for a while, and that involved outer space in a much more complex way, in a different way than I'm used to. I'm used to these stories involving other worlds, have a very formulaic kind of thing that they go through. This one, I had to just keep being bewildered at where the author was going to take me, because it went in such wild different directions. And I'm leaving myself very excited about the upcoming Netflix show that's going to be, I think it's going to be called The Three Body Problem. It's got to be good, right? I mean, this shows the major events going on here, and I'm struggling so hard not to ruin things with spoilers, but it's made to be a very excellent source of like visual media, I feel like. And it works really well in a book, but it's got to work real well when you get to visualize everything going on here. I just hope that people can stick around long enough to get that hook in, because it starts pretty slow and in a weird direction. You don't even know where it's going. And then by the end of the first book, you're like, oh man, I can't wait to read the next one. So this one in particular, you know, I think I'm going to have to switch to spoilers now. But just know before you duck out, for people that haven't read this, I would recommend this probably to everybody that can deal with a lot of explanation and that has some sort of passing interest in sci-fi. And it's a beautifully written story, and that just keeps the mind riveted. So big recommendation from me, big stamp of approval on this book and the entire series. So let us switch to spoilers and talk a little bit more in depth here about what was working and what wasn't working for me. So what worked for me here was the surprise in the first half of this, because at the end of the second book, it feels like the series is done. The Earth has solved the problem of the 𝐿 using the dark forest theory, and essentially mutually assured destruction with that threat over them, and they've cowed them into compliance. So where does this third book go? And it goes in a very ingenious direction, where we find out that the person who's left in charge of this mutually assured destruction has to change hands. So it all boils down to a single individual who has to decide whether to essentially announce Earth's location to the galaxy, which will bring sure death, if the 𝐿 try anything. And it goes down to one person, because if it was in the hands of the masses, they would never agree to end themselves. They would probably, succumb to an alien invasion rather than the assured annihilation of their world. But if it was one person, then there's a lot of unpredictability there. And as long as that one person could have a high enough percentage chance of ruining the 𝐿, they're not going to do anything about it. Well, that person has to retire. They're called the sword holder. And the next person that comes in is not up to the job. And the 𝐿 know this. And the moment that the power changes hands, they attack. And that is awesome. And the way that they attack and the brutality of it and the drastic impacts that it immediately has on the future of this book and the end of the series is monumental. I wasn't ready for the book to go that hard, where in the blink of an eye, you have the 𝐿 in charge. They've sequestered every individual in the world into Australia. They run a horribly brutal regime with at the point of a gun, essentially, towards everybody. And just this crazy dystopian society that is instantly changed once the 𝐿 are in charge. And I loved these. All of the scenes that involved Australia were magnificent. And I found that the solution to the problem came way too quickly, where you had this ship who announces the location that the 𝐿 can't get a hold of, and they essentially pull the doomsday, hit the doomsday button. 𝐿 leave because they know that Earth is done, and Earth has to deal with, what to do from here. And that's beautifully done. But it came around the halfway point in the book, and it's like, there's so much book left. Where are we going to go with this? And I didn't love the direction that it went, because I found that first part a 5 out of 5. The second half was a 3 out of 5 at best. I mean, it was just this weird story about, two-dimensional coming to our world and turning everything two-dimensional and killing everything. And, we're trying to leave Earth and hide in the shadows of some of the planets, and Earth is, in its demise, and very few people are going to live, if any. And it was bleak. I don't mind bleak. In fact, I love bleak books. But it just felt dull. It didn't keep me captivated. I really wanted to find out how the series was going to end. You got the hint that the series was going to end in a very bad way, given the series name of Remembrance of Earth's Past. And because that doesn't sound good. And so, yeah, it was dull, and I didn't like the ending at all. And I felt like it was way too ambitious. And if the ending of the book was, if the book was stretched out and we got to find out about how the 𝐿𝐵 had this horrible regime on Earth, and we got to learn more about that, and then the book, I felt like the book would end beautifully on hitting the doomsday button. We don't need to know what is going to happen. We already know it's going to end. What a great ending that would be. It would leave it up to the reader to determine how quickly that death came and what form it came in, or some sort of indication that the threat is coming, and then close scene. And you draw the curtains. That would have been great for me. Maybe some people would have been like, oh, that sucks. That's like a Sopranos ending. But I would have loved it. So yeah, left with a little bit of sour feeling, but yeah, I love the series, and I'm going to recommend it to a ton of people. And I've already recommended it to some people. And I'll continue to do so and beat the drum. And I hope that the series does well on Netflix and gets the attention that I think it deserves, because I think we need a good alien show, and there haven't been a lot of good ones. We need good alien books, and this is at the top of the charts for me. And full of surprise and ingenious writing that I'm just excited that more people are going to be able to get exposed to. And I hope it blows up. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, Gregory, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝗏𝗏𝐸𝐴, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Tay C, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Fanixan, Harry B, Joe, Cat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Philippe, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.